Hi everybody, welcome to this tutorial. I'm Jolene and I, alongside my friend Lucy, facilitate a Facebook group called Live Art Journaling and Self-Development. And this month has all been about constructing a junk journal. If you'd like to be part of our Facebook group and see all the tutorials alongside this video and all of the live workshops, we have 2 a week, you are more than welcome to join our Facebook group. The link can be found in the description below. Now, for those of you who are already part of the Facebook group and who have been constructing your junk journal alongside me, you now will have arrived at a place where you have a whole load of pages and bits and pieces that we're going to use to pack out our junk journals. I do want to say at this point that these junk journals are supposed to be big and bulky. One of the beautiful things about a junk journal is being able to pack it out with all sorts of bits and pieces. So the first thing that I want you to do is to remove any tags, boards, bits of ribbon, anything like that you've got hidden in your pockets in your pages. Let's just start with our blank pages. And I want you to get each signature. We've got 7 signatures, each a different colour of the rainbow. I want you to get each one, and I want each one to have 3 pages in it. So let's have a see what I've got. So in my first signature, my red one, I've got my red page, I've got my music page with my handmade washi tape, and then I pop another page in there, and what I'm choosing to use is watercolour paper. It's really good for mixed media. My next signature, my orange one, I've got the orange signature, the packet with the labels in it, and then I put a blank piece of paper in the middle. I want you to make sure that, especially on those plastic envelopes that we made, that they are your second page, not your middle page. You must have a page after those. So this one here, the green one, I have only got my green signature, so I'm going to have 2 sheets of watercolour paper in there. I tend to enjoy having blank sheets in the middle of my book so that when I arrive at it I have this double spread of blank paper, but it's entirely up to you. You can arrange them how you want. Each signature must have 3 pieces of paper in it, and the other rule is that in between your pockets, your plastic pockets, there must be another piece of paper. Okay, so let's start talking about binding. You're going to need a large-eyed needle. A very large embroidery needle is good for this, or obviously a bookbinding needle. You're going to need some linen threads. Now I buy these from eBay very cheaply, linen waxed thread. If you don't have that, you can use embroidery floss. And a little tip, get yourself a block of beeswax and just run that embroidery thread around and along that beeswax, and it creates a wax seal. You'll see later on that I wax even my pre-waxed thread. It just makes it go through the holes that we're going to create later a lot easier. Now you're also going to need some pens to make some mark making with. You'll need an awl, which is that little wooden handled object there. It's like a long sharp tool on a wooden handle. You can use a needle if you want to. It is a good idea to try and buy yourself an awl though if you're going to do lots of book binding. Whenever I teach bookbinding, there is a little moment of panic amongst all of my students. It really doesn't need to be difficult. I want you to sit at a table and get your book in front of you. You're going to take a pen to start off with and just run along the inside of your opening so that you get a nice black line all along your pages. This is where we're going to make our holes. Once you've done that, take your pages, lay them flat open on a board. You can see I've got a soft wooden board there that I like to use, but you could also use a folded over bit of cardboard. Lay your signatures out, so there's all 3 sheets there. Take your awl or your bradawl or your sharp needle and punch a hole all the way through all 3 of your signatures. And you're going to do this. You should just have 2 holes. That's right, those of you who do lots of bookbinding will be thinking, what are we doing? But you literally only need 2 holes. The rest will become clear as we move on. So the next bit is so tricky to do a voiceover on. I have to say this is probably the most complicated voiceover I've ever done. So keep your eyes on what I'm doing as well as what I'm saying, and hopefully all will become clear. I've got a length of my thread here. Now, some people tend to measure it and come up with some wonderful arithmetic as to how much you need. I tend to always do it by eye, and if I run out in the middle, I tie a knot. You're going to pop your signature down, and you're going to choose, obviously, if you want your rainbow to start at red or end at red. Mine is going to start at red, so I'm starting with my purple at the bottom, and I'm going to push my needle through from the inside. Now, you only do this on the first signature. I'm going to push my needle through from the inside with my thread, and I take a pen or a bit of stick and wrap my thread round. That's just to stop it popping back out again when I pull it through. So I pull it from the inside to the outside. I go through the hole, the big hole that we've cut out of our cover. I go around the outside. Come on, I know my beach girls are singing the song at this point. Round the outside, round the outside. So right the way round. Then back into the center of your first signature and through that hole that you created all the way back through to the outside again. And then you're going to be left with the tail from the end of your thread, which you're going to just knot over. You'll see what I do in a minute. So I pull this thread through. I'm going to let that go. And then the little tail that I've got left over wrapped around that needle, I'm just going to tie that down. So I'm grabbing my needle again, pulling through to the front, and that's our first signature sewn in. Just to secure the stitch, I'm going to wrap my needle around that band of thread that I've got there, just pushing it in from the bottom up to the top. Now, the only signature that you start from the inside out is the first one, okay? Because what we're going to do now is get our next signature. So still keeping in the order, you can see I've got my signatures all behind the book there. I'm going to pop that in, and what I tend to do is put my fingers of my left hand into the middle of the signature, so that I've sort of opened it up, ready to guide the needle in. So what I do now is I push my needle in, so now we're going from the outside in to the centre. You may need to have a bit of a fiddle and a faff around on this to start off with, finding those holes, pushing through. I promise it gets easier the more that you do it. So I'm pushing my needle in through all 3 signatures. It's coming in, and then I'm going to go around the top of my cover, round the outside, and then this is the clever little move. What I'm going to do is push that blue signature down just a little bit, and you'll be able to see that there is a thread in between the purple and the blue signatures, and that's where your needle now needs to go. When I do the latter half, I do zoom right in for you so that you'll be able to see where that thread goes. So let's do it again. Let's get our next signature. We pop that all together. Sometimes what I do is I use a ruler to get all of my signatures laying down and making sure the crease is all in the right place. So I'm going to put my needle now, is going to go into the hole. I've got my fingers ready, waiting to guide that needle so that it comes into the middle of the signature. Pull it through. Round the outside, round the outside. I know you're all singing it. There's a bit of a joke that on the retreat that I run every year, when I say that, everybody sings the song. And then I'm using my needle to catch that little loop between the 2 signatures and pulling it nice and tight. And you're going to repeat that all the way to the top signature. Now those of you watching this getting all stressed, thinking you're not going to be able to do this, don't forget you can pause the video, you can rewind it, you can go back and forward. Just make sure while you're doing this binding that you're sat at a table, you've got a nice cup of tea, you've got a little biscuit, and you know, don't make it a stressful thing. It doesn't need to be. Okay, once you get to that last signature and you've secured your thread by going in between those 2 little threads, you're going to pull the end through to the middle, and of course I left my thread way too short, and you're just going to knot it around the thread that you've got there in the book, and that secures the top of your book. And then you're going to turn it around, and we're going to do exactly the same process on the other side, and you're all going to be fine, and you're all going to do a great job. Right, let's get doing that other side. First thing we need is a good length of thread, and I'm just running it over my wax to stop it knotting. And then, if you remember, we start with the first signature only. We're going to start on the inside. Now I like to turn my book over so that I start from the bottom. It's just easier for me working from the bottom, but you do whatever you need to do. So I'm going to start on the inside. I pull my thread through, leaving a tail. I take a pen and wrap it around that tail to stop it being pulled through when I'm pulling the thread tight. I then go round the outside, back through the hole that I've already made in the middle, I told you this was a complicated one to do a voiceover. So I'm pushing my needle back through the hole that I've originally made. Of course, the first 2 times I did it, the needle fell out, but there we go. So pulling it nice and tight, remembering not to pull it too tight so I loosen the thread and yank it through. Unpick it from the pen that it was just wrapped around and secure it down by tying it onto the thread that you've got going around the back of the book. Okay, pulling it tight, wrapping that needle around that band of thread that I've got there, and then I'm going to be pushing my needle into my next signature. And don't forget, little tiny tip, if you put your fingers inside your next signature so that you've got it open and you're guiding that needle through, you'll be able to push it through. So I've just done a bit of a zoom in here for you. So I put my needle into the next signature. It's always a bit tricky finding that needle. So I'm going to pull it through, come round the outside, and then that little tiny bit of a loop of thread that's in between your red and orange signatures at this point, I push my needle through and that secures my thread. Don't worry if your threads start bunching up, because we can always sort that out at the end, and in fact I've got a little technique for you at the end to do that. So then we can go for the next signature. It's always so much easier when you've got the first lot done on that first side. I'm just opening up my pages so I can put my hands in the place ready to receive the needle. I push the needle in through the yellow signature, guiding it through with my hand, taking it round the spine of the book, all the way round, and then just popping my needle in that little stitch between now the orange and the yellow signature and pulling it nice and tight, and repeat all the way to the end and then secure off as before. So don't forget, once you come to that last signature and you've gone through the little loop, you need to go back through your hole into the middle of your final signature and just tie off your threads. And then you can snip all of your little ends so that they're kind of not so tassely in the middle. I wouldn't cut them too short. I always fear that they will unthread and kind of end up losing themselves. So just cut them nice and short, nice and neatly, and then you can start refilling your book. But before you do, we can add our beads. Okay, little tip to the wise: if your threads have sort of your knots end up finding their way halfway up your spine, just use your awl and just push them down in between your threads, because those knots are supposed to be along the edge, not in the middle. Okay, let's take our beads. Now, these are the cocoon beads that we made on another video on YouTube. You can find it if you scroll down. and a couple of mine I've sort of added little beads to them. One of them I added an old jewellery, a bit of earring to the bottom. And I want to attach these to the spine of my book, and you can do this any way that you want to do, but I'm just showing you how I did it. I take a length of my linen thread, I thread it from the top to the bottom of one of my beads, and I secure it by just tying it to the top of the dangly earring that I've got hanging below. Then the top end of the thread, and again this is one of those things, it's much easier to show than it is to talk to you. So here you can see me, I'm just pulling it through, so I've got obviously one end is up the top. I'm just going to tie a knot below the bead around the top of that earring that I've got dangling from beneath it. And then I wrap it around the thread of my spine of my book. And then I do exactly the same with another one of my cocoon beads, so I actually end up with two dangling from the side of my book, and it just is an absolute dream to look at when you've done them. So time to start filling our journal up again, and what you'll notice is that as you fill it out, those pages are going to start getting bulkier and bulkier. Don't forget this is a junk journal, so the pages, they're going to lay less flat, but we're going to have more than enough room to play in them and have fun. This is probably a good time as any to say do hit the subscribe button and do come and join our art journaling page, because we are going to be working in this art journal, this junk journal, all through the year really. It's going to be such great fun. We're going to have a real laugh with it, and it means that we're going to end up at the end of the year with a beautiful, beautiful journal. Just a word to the wise, I've got these lovely bling balls in my Etsy page. I'll put the link below. These are just recycled sari remnants that I cut into ribbons. I'm going to use a great big length of one of those just to secure my junk journal. There's no clever closures in this. If you do want a bling ball, just head to the Etsy page and you'll find them all there, along with a plethora of other bits and pieces. I've had so much fun making this junk journal with you. I can't wait for us to fill it out. I'll see you all ever so soon. Have a great day.